Welcome to the DMF. I'm Justin Younts. This is part one. Welcome to the DMF. I have Alan Katz, A.L. Katz, writer and producer for the successful HBO television series Tales from the Crypt. He also does podcasts How Not to Make a Movie, DNA Horror Story, and many others. Welcome to the DMF. Thanks for coming.
It is my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Justin.
Thank you. I appreciate this. All right. So first thing where'd you grow up?
I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up outside of Baltimore, Maryland. I went to school. I went to Vassar. I was in high school. I was a drama-rama. At Vassar, I was a theater major, a drama major. And when I graduated out of Vassar, I thought I was going to be an actor. I've always been a writer. I've been a professional writer since I was 16. It was the first time I ever got paid for writing. And so I guess I always took writing for granted. It was something I could it came as naturally as breathing.
Yeah.
I wanted to be an actor when I went to Vassar. I also directed, but I went to one audition after Vassar. I was terrible. I was not well prepared. And I walked out of it and I thought, screw this. What kind of an actor was to make their living as an actor? I'm going to go be a writer instead, bigger. And I said to myself, I promised myself I would never act again until someone asked me nicely. And ironically, that's exactly what happened. The couple of times I've acted since then, a friend was directing an episode of America's Most Wanted, and he said, "Hey, would you be in this episode?" And I went, "Oh, okay, you asked nicely. Okay, I'll do it." And then when I was doing Tales from the Crypt, Mick Garris directed an episode, and for certain particular reasons, he felt the need to make it up to me, and so he asked me to be in the episode, to act in the episode, and he asked very nicely, and so I said yes. So I turned to writing, and I was doing little training films and public relations pieces. And a friend from high school named Carol Yumpkus had become an agent at William Morris, a literary agent at William Morris in Los Angeles. And she said, knowing that I was writing and writing plays, I thought, New York's still going to be New York theater. She said, you should try writing a screenplay. So I wrote one. And she said, this is pretty good. You should come out and meet and greet people, see what LA's like. And so in June 1985, I flew out for a week to Los Angeles, and I was a burgeoning New York. To me, Los Angeles was the stupidest place on the planet, the land of the avocado head. But, June in New York, it's hot and it's humid, and in Manhattan, walking around everywhere smelled like piss back then. In Los Angeles, it's the desert. It's humid. If there's no humidity, it's the weather's fantastic. And this is 40 years ago, a lot less traffic. People were so nice to me. The meetings blowing copious amounts of smoke up my backside. One evening, Carol took me to a movie premiere, St. Elmo's Fire. William Morris represented it. And so my view of this was entirely backstage. And, it was intoxicating. At the party afterwards, I didn't have any meetings scheduled for the next morning. So someone said, you should take a drive through Topanga Canyon. And so the next morning, that's what I did. And if you don't know what Topanga Canyon is, it's within the Los Angeles city limits. 40 years ago, it was a lot more wild, a lot less developed. And it's beautiful. As I was driving from the 101, the freeway, through the Santa Monica Mountains, as they plunge into the ocean at PCH, right at the water at the Pacific Ocean, New York, screw New York. LA had completely seduced me. I was ready to whore myself out entirely.
That's what people say about LA when they come from New York. It's like, I hate it, and then I like it, because it's just different.
Shocking. But the following June, the next month, July, I moved out. And one of the people that I met that first week in Los Angeles, one of the producers who liked what I was doing, was a guy named Gil Adler. Now, though I made my living in horror mostly and sci-fi, I was not a horror guy. I'm not a horror guy to this day. I'm a
Yeah.
comedy guy. I wrote comedy. What I wrote and sent to Carol was a comedy.
What were
Um,
your comedy? What were your comedy guys like? Who
the
did you?
the
What shows did you like?
well, I loved. I was a Marx Brother fan.
Okay.
So I had written the first screenplay I wrote was a thing called Down to Earth. It was about a character like me that he was in college and he's gets on the air to a Howard Stern like disc jockey who has a guest who says that he has experienced aliens, and the college kid says, "Hey, I've met the same aliens, and this guy's absolutely right, except about this thing where he's wrong, and he needs to stop saying that." And he thinks it's what a great prank, and suddenly
Yeah.
people are coming at this kid. Okay, what do you know? What do you know? Is this true what you just said? And the kid finds himself in a situation he never anticipated. That's the script I wrote. And that's
Yeah.
what
Yeah. Yeah.
people started to respond to. One of them was this producer named Gil Adler. Now, Gil he had also not a horror guy, it was comedy. He had come out of the theater in New York
Okay.
and he had trained as an accountant. So Gil understood that if you have $1 to spend making your TV show or movie, don't spend $1 you haven't got it. Now, if you can make your movie or TV show for 99 cents, 98 cents, still make it look like that dollar, this is good. Better still, if you can do it for 97 or 96 cents, make it look like $1 or $2. Now you're on to something that you can, yeah, that's viable. Um, the creative process is constant problem solving. And Gil's answer wasn't throw money at the problem, it was throw more creativity at the problem. Well, that's exactly my approach. And so
Yeah.
Gil and I became not only best friends, but creative partners for a decade. Now, Gil was working mostly as a producer. He got hired by HBO to produce a show for them called The Hitchhiker, which he did up in Vancouver. And a couple of years later, they had a problematic production. The HBO knew that Gil knew he was responsible with the budget and the schedule. They had a problem production at HBO, an expensive thing with some expensive people involved called Vietnam War Stories. And it was shooting in Savannah. It was over budget. Schedule was a mess. And they sent Gil in to take it over and try to set the boat right. And yeah, he fixed all the problems. In fact, it won a couple of awards. And a little while later, HBO had another big ticket, expensive production that needed a steady producerial hand. It was called Tales from the Crypt. Now, when HBO first got into the Tales from the Crypt business, into the creative business, in the early 90s, they were still mostly movies. As they began to dip their toe in, they had a show called Dream On, another one called First, what was it? The First and 10 was a football show. It was a Dream
You
On
mentioned
and
you mentioned the Hitchhiker. I remember the Hitchhiker. I know Dream. Like these shows aren't even on like HBO Max or anything. Like they're kind of like shows that like if you know about them, they exist and they
yeah, yeah.
don't. You know, they're
There was
like
nothing. There was nothing special about them. They were
yeah,
small. They were First and 10 and Dream. First and 10 was First and 10
first
and
and
Dream On were basically they were single camera shows with nudity and profanity. If you took out the nudity and profanity, these were basically network ready single camera shows. There was nothing extraordinary about them. But then you get these four Hollywood mega movie producers: Joel Silver, Richard Donner, Walter Hill, Bob Zemeckis, and they have this passion project, this comic book they collectively loved from their boyhoods, all the EC Comics horror titles, and all the EC titles, but the horror is one they want to start with. Tales from the Crypt is what they want to call it. And they approach HBO and they say, we want to take this boyhood passion project. We want to take our feature film vision and put it in your little TV box. HBO jumped up and down and said, yes, let's do it. And they went right into the writing process.
hmm,
They basically, in order to take a franchise, the franchise elements of the comic book you love, and translate them into a whole other medium. Well, it doesn't happen by magic. You have to make that happen. And if you're going to do it as a TV show, there's got to be somebody in charge of making sure that every script you write, all the stuff that is important in the franchise and the comic books, you got to get over into this new medium. They never hired anybody. There was never any development process. They just began writing scripts. The first 3 episodes of Tales from the Crypt, the initial order of 3, are brilliant because it's Dick Donner's Dig This Cat, He's Real Gone, Bob Z's All Through the House, and Walter's The Man Who Was Death. And these are 3 brilliant Tales from the Crypt episodes. They're 3 great episodes of television. Yeah. HBO ordered it back 3, which are not quite up.
What's really interesting about this time? This Tales from the Crypt comes out 1989. And you see at that time, you also have, Twin Peaks came out at that time. You had The Simpsons. It was kind of like you can kind of see a cultural shift that's happening.
They're also important at the time that that Crypt started. Movies and feature films were 2 very different worlds. Now, these days, people can travel back and forth between them, but back then there was a massive divide. The occasional Tom Hanks or Robin Williams would go from movies into TV, but if you were going from TV into movies, that basically meant your career was done.
It's kind of like commercials. The commercials, if a big Hollywood actor did a commercial, they would do it in another country.
Yes.
No one would see it.
Yeah. So it was a very the feature world was where you wanted to be. That was where all the respect was. TV was workaday.
Yeah.
But Tales from the Crypt changed that because part of the lure was the feature film vision inside the little TV box. During the screening, the cast and crew screening of those first 3 episodes, after the first episode ran, 2 crew members in the second row, and one turned to the other and says, "Wow, that's great TV." The other says, "It's not TV, it's HBO." Yeah. And the 2 HBO execs in the row ahead turned and they looked back and realized not only had they just heard their new slogan, that's their culture. Yeah. And Tales from the Crypt changed HBO's culture. It did. And HBO, HBO was the first successful subscription model company. Up till that point, the whole business, how money flowed in and out, was based on trying to get to syndication because that's where profitability lay. And syndication, you had to get to 65 episodes because all right, so syndication, you're going to strip it 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. So that's an ad cycle is 13 weeks times that 5 days a week. 5 times 13 is 65. So in order to become profitable, a show had to have 65 episodes in the can. Now, because that was where profitability lay, shows that were created could not be open-ended. They had to be close-ended because people weren't necessarily going to watch them in sequence. So you couldn't do really too much chronological storytelling.
Yeah.
That's why shows were created the way that they were created. Then HBO happened, and HBO didn't care about 65. In fact, they didn't own anything. They didn't own anything on Tales from the Crypt. I don't know if they owned anything anywhere.
Yeah. They just owned the sandbox for where these things would be placed.
Yeah, basically. So with Tales from the Crypt, not only did they not develop, they didn't develop the show. They didn't find a deficit partner either. Now, the way that TV economics work, whenever the network, whatever network it is that runs it, every time they run it, they pay a license fee.
Yeah.
But the license fee that first time, 2, even 3 times, that's not going to pay for the cost of production. That's why you get a deficit partner who's going to cash flow and be the bank until you get to profitability. Then, of course, they're first in line, pay me off first, and they're first in line for profits, pay me off first. But all right, they're taking the financial risk of making the whole thing possible. Okay, I accept that. Uh, the Crypt partners never did that, and HBO, after the first three and then the second three of the first season, they ordered a second season of 18 episodes and a third season of 13 episodes, and that was going to be, in essence, the end of Tales from the Crypt.
Wait, so they wanted 18 episodes?
The second season is 18 episodes.
Really? Wow, I didn't even realize.
And then there was a third season. The third season, when I went aboard, is 13. But because there was no deficit partner and HBO was just cash flowing it, well, it was just getting spent. And the night before the season 2 wrap party, the executive producers were handed a financial statement by HBO, which said, guys, you're $1 million cash in the hole. If you want your season 3, and there was lots of money for the executive producers in season 3, get out your checkbooks, pay us back. The executive producers promptly canceled the wrap party. They fired everybody. And they got out their checkbooks and they paid HBO the $1 million because there was more, they would get that $1 million back out of the budget of the show, which is exactly what they did, and get their money, whatever fees they were going to get for season 3. So that's what was most important to
were they. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.